thing that has lifted people out of poverty in the last 20 years. It's only the periods of high growth. And everybody gets to share in it. Yes, you should have social welfare programs for the few who cannot take advantage of that situation. But the best thing is to give skills, to equip people so that they can take advantage of the new opportunities. If you stop growth and say, oh, I'm doing inclusion. Inclusion in India is a word to explain low growth.
Is that the big failing?
Like losses was for the public sector units. No, we are not into making profits. We are discharging social responsibility. It's the same thing in matters of growth.
Is that the big failing of UPA too? This extravagant welfareism, all these schemes, food security bill, Manrega. Is that the big failing and not focusing enough on growth, on reforms?
Actually, they are focused on nothing. All these schemes that you are talking of is just taking money and throwing it out of the window. The biggest failing is that the Manmohan Singh government has once again taken away from India the sense of possibilities.
What do you mean by that?
In India, as in Panditji's initial years, in the 1950s, so also in Mr. Bajpayee's times, it was the feeling, you got a feeling in India, we can do things. We can achieve high growth. We can be a substantial factor in world affairs. That sense of possibilities has been wrenched out of India.
But has Manmohan Singh been judged a little too harshly? You've heard him say that history will judge me better than the contemporary
probably
media.
He knows history.
I've done better than what the media says.
I'm furious with this man. Everybody hoped so much from him. He has given good men a bad name. People who say, get a crook, let him do something. This man's core competence is to deflect blame on others. On Raja, on some secretary of coal, on the world economic situation. Nothing about him. He is not even responsible for the ministry and the office which he was presiding over. After all, in 2G, the PMO, and in coal, the PMO was doing things. He said, I'm not responsible. I have known him since 1972, and people are surprised that he has done nothing. He has never done anything. Never. And that's the qualification on account of which he was chosen to be Prime Minister. So Manmohan Singh, we should leave it to history.
So what has he done to the Prime Minister's office? How do you think the Prime Minister's office can be rescued now?
You see, in India, it is the far sight of the constitution makers. There are many problems with the parliamentary system, but one of its virtues was the executive is the executive not because it is accountable to Parliament. It is the executive because it controls Parliament. So you cannot have a situation, one of the most sagacious men explained this to me so well, that you cannot have the situation of the Americans, in which the Congress can block Obama. Here, so long as you are the Prime Minister of the government, the Parliament, especially these days when all voting is on party lines, you can really run a government. But you have to exercise that authority. So the Prime Minister of India, because of his virtue of controlling the cabinet, which controlled the Parliament, is actually more powerful than the President of the United States. But you have to exercise that power. You can't just sit there and if something happens, you say, oh no, he did it. The devil did it. That's all he's been doing. So he has destroyed the basic pillar of governance in India, and that is the Prime Minister. So the first thing that the next man would have to do would be to restore the authority of the Prime Minister.
Let's come back to the question of reforms. How central is the reforms agenda going to be for the next government?
I think it's very important, but we'll have to see what can be done. And that is, I feel that the Parliament will be even more dysfunctional after the next elections than it has been in the last few years. Therefore, the first thing that the Prime Minister must do is to make a list of things that can be done without legislation. A good example is look at Mr. Raghuram Rajan. No legislation, but he is bringing about reforms in the banking sector. So make a list of those things that you can do.
What would be the top of your agenda?
Even simple announcements that if a clearance has been given, I will not put impediments in it retrospectively, as has happened under this government. Vedanta, POSCO, Cairn. Second, I will not have retrospective taxation. Third, that the government will fight others with great force up to the High Court. But after that, I will not go to the Supreme Court unless there is a clear, suborning of justice at the High Court level. Otherwise, you are tying up the whole economy in this. Second important thing would be dialogue with the judiciary, because the judiciary, they are not taking account of the meta consequences of their judgments on the system, on the basic structure of the Constitution. And they are going on with circulars and so on and so on. And one of the reasons this has happened really is the abdication of authority and function by the executive. Third, I think, is the regulatory system. Do you know, Sagarika, you are so well informed. The head of SEBI, he told me there are 36 regulators, 9 in the financial system itself. So it is a maze. It has grown like a coral reef. Mm-hmm. So we need to look at this regulatory system.
I want to just pursue this economics and politics question. You know, it is said that good economics is bad politics. That if you pursue reform or you pursue a growth agenda, sometimes you can't sell this to the public. What you can sell to the public is populism, is schemes. Is that changing? What do you make of that argument?
No, but what has Manmohan Singh been doing? Bad economics and bad politics? So it's a counter example. What has Narendra Modi been doing? Good economics and good politics? After all, these people are winning 3-4 elections on the theme of growth. Mm-hmm. Or it's Shivraj Chauhan, it's on growth. And Gehlot, who did not do work on the economic side, has been wiped out. So how do we get these notions of good economics?
Because both Shivraj Chauhan and Raman Singh, you could say, are also following populist policies. Free rice, handouts.
Well, I would certainly think that then that would have consequences of its own. But that's not the dominant feature of those. After all, look at Gehlot. What freebies did he not give? Free medicines. Look at DMK. What freebies did it not give, including television sets? So, not freebies, growth. People don't want a free television set. They want jobs. They want education.
Right.
They want health.
Just to come back to the Modi point which you raised. Yes. You said he's doing good economics as well as good politics. You're a great supporter of Narendra Modi. What do you believe is there about Modi that makes him so attractive in 2014?
I think, well, as I have said earlier, Manmohan Singh makes him most attractive. People look at Manmohan Singh and they say, "Arey Baba, Modi lao." So, you see, you are facing a big challenge and you have little Billy here. You say, "Yaar, sher lao, sher hame bachayega." So that's what's happening. But in Modi's case, he is the reputation for decision, for clarity. He is the favorite minister of civil servants because he takes a decision right in front of a committee. At that time, he gives you all the resources and you deliver. That's a good thing.
But he has a spotted record, doesn't he?
In what sense?
He is seen as a polarizer.
But
do you believe as a Prime Minister of India you can have that kind of polarizing identity?
Sagarika, the problem is, these are words that the media invents. You know, in India, in the books that I write, some of the reviewers have not read my books. They say, but a controversial book. What do you mean by controversial? Arun is controversial. So Modi is a much bigger fellow, so they say polarizer. It's just a word. Maybe between right and wrong, there should be polarizers. Between doing something and not doing something, you should have a polarizer.
But do you think the 2002 riots, the failure to, say, apologize on the part of Modi, the failure to express remorse, is that a constraint on his prime ministerial ambition?
I don't think so. You know, I tell you one thing. This blog that was written by him in this recently circulated. Now, if he does not write, people say, "Arey, itna bhi nahi kaha." When he writes, people say, "Election ke liye keh raha hai." Isn't that what Kapil Sibal said? What does an apology mean? Apology means, I'll tell you what a Gandhian apology is. It is the determination to make sure that something does not happen again. I'll give you one instance and you please get an answer on television from all these three characters. There were three Congress chief ministers around Gujarat at that time: Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. Modi personally rang up each one of the three. He said, please rush your police forces here. I'm facing a real situation. Among do you know who the Madhya Pradesh chief minister was? Digvijay Singh. And not one of them sent one sipai. Have they apologized?
Right.
So it's a general breakdown of administration.
Were he to apologize, were Modi to
I would
apologize
absolutely
and
no.
express remorse,
I
do you
would
think that
not.
would give him a big boost to his popularity?
Immediately people will say he's doing it for elections. The record is, yes, there was a breakdown and it has never happened again in Gujarat. And I would hope that he would stand on that and not go in for this apology and so on. That's nonsense.
So you believe he has already given a Gandhian apology?
I don't know. Gandhiji's methods of doing things were completely different. Modi, I believe, has done the right thing of ensuring that the thing is not repeated again. But if I did a wrong, I'll tell you, in my personal life, if I did a wrong, then the apology that I would have would not be a verbal apology, but an apology which would, actually that's Gandhiji's phrase, is the determination to ensure that I would never do that wrong again. So this remorse business is just a media creation.
Right. Let's take a short break at this point and come back and talk much more about governance, about politics in the new year with Arun Souri.
My name is Professor Amitabh Bhattacharya, and I'm going to be your dean for the next 2 years. Why don't we introduce ourselves?
I'm Rajiv, and I'm from Time.